Hey there, it's the Get Work Podcast, and we're talking about ghosts. And this is the episode 3 or third part, really, of ghosts. And this time around, we've talked to expert Kai, filmmaker, cursed person himself, Evan Jordan, and friend. And now we're getting into a real pro that's been around ghosts. He made a whole movie about a group of ghost hunters who, unfortunately, picked the wrong house to investigate in Lake Tahoe Mountains in the Sierra Nevadas. That is Sean Nichols Lynch, the director of Red Snow. The ceremony is about to begin, and his new feature, which had its world premiere this past month at the Unnamed Footage Fest 9. That is a movie called This House is Totally Haunted. And John, it's a little longer episode than usual. It was also fused, as I mentioned in the interview, with my regular podcast, which is the Balboa Theater podcast, featuring him as a San Francisco Bay Area filmmaker, and that is the focus of that podcast. And here is sort of the jumping off point, a fusing of sorts. And the episode was edited down to more focus on just the filmmaking process of it and talking about UF. Here you get the full-length version, hour-plus interview of me and Sean hanging out, talking about ghosts, talking about plenty of ghosts, childhood memories of ghosts. Again, Sean has a lot of memories of playing around with Ouija boards, unlike in the last episode where Evan bought a Parker Brothers copyrighted Ouija board and played around with some ghosts in Florida. Here, Sean talks about childhood memories, his friends making the real Ouija boards, messing around out in Southern California area. Also, inspirations for his features, as well as some real good banger picks on haunted ghost films that I think is quite the great conversation piece. But again, this is part 3, episode 3 of Get Warped Ghosts. Stick around. Hey everybody, we are back. This is an ongoing, several part piece now on the Get Warped podcast, talking about ghosts. And I'm with somebody today that is a filmmaker, artist, also definitely just premiered at the Balboa Theater, his new feature film, This House is Totally Haunted, which may or may not have ghosts in it. We will get more into it as well, but also has shown several films at Unnamed Footage Fest as well in the past, and as well as the Another Hole in the Head, his feature Red Snow, which you can catch on Prime and all those streaming platforms as well. And also someone who also is on the esteemed Bay list as well.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, indeed, there he is. So I would like to just make a good welcome to Get Warped welcome to filmmaker, auteur, all around ghost believer. We'll see what he believes here in a second, Mr. Sean Lynch. How you doing out there,
Hey,
Sean?
thanks for having me, Benji.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Oh, it's all things ghosts. I didn't even think this was gonna get more, and then I was like, wait, you are perfect for our ghosts section.
I
Even though
checked a lot
like
of boxes for this, yeah.
yeah, it was funny because we lost one guest for the Balboa Theater podcast, and so I was like, oh, what do we do? And then it's like, oh wait, like I know I'm gonna have Sean on at some point. And then we saw each other at UF because we both had movies premiering there, and so it's just been. And then also there's the Dreamland that we hang out at,
Oh
which
yeah.
more
Shout
things
out
are.
Dreamland Cinema in
Yeah,
Sacramento. Yeah.
Tish is amazing on that end.
Yeah,
So
Tish and Lauren.
and Lauren, that's
Yeah.
like, what is their partner's name? I'm gonna forget. And but I also saw what was a rough cut friends and family version of This House is Totally Haunted. And so, speaking of which, do you believe in ghosts? What's going on there?
I should have a firm answer for that since I have a ghost movie out now, or at least on the festival circuit. But I don't know, it's difficult because I don't necessarily believe in an afterlife, which should close the door on ghosts, but I am open to the idea that, matter takes different
Hmm.
forms. There might be forces that we don't understand. I don't know if they're necessarily people. they might be more echoes of people. But yeah, I'm open-minded about that sort of stuff. I think that it's it's in conflict with my pretty strong belief that we just get one turn at this life, and that's the life we have now. But I'm open to these ideas.
Yeah, something about the present tense that's more
Yeah.
on that end. No, I think that's interesting. Did you ever think though, as a kid growing up, that you saw a ghost, experienced a ghost? I talk a lot about how I thought I saw something, and then all of a sudden it was like the story of the Henry and the Terrible Whatsits, where really it was just like a cabinet full of like laundry and brooms and stuff, or or I thought Jeffrey
Yeah.
Dahmer was tapping at my window, things
I
like
mean,
that.
I mean, this is a good segue in the sense that, my co-filmmakers for this house is totally haunted, and the ceremony is about to begin. We all grew up in the same small town together, and it was a town like a lot of small towns. It was just rife with legends of ghosts, and certainly they have both had encounters. I'm kind of jealous that I haven't had anything quite as cool as what they've experienced, but. There was, I mean, one of my favorite legends is that a cemetery, there's an old cemetery in our hometown, and you're supposed to find Fly's grave. It's this whole thing. There's a grave with the name Fly on it, and you're supposed to knock on it. And apparently, if you do that late at night, you'll encounter some strange juju. And I remember going on at least one of those trips with those guys that looking for Fly's grave. I can't remember if we found it or not. These were often, predicated on being kind of buzzed doing these things. But the crazier story was, John, who's in the movie, he plays Mr. Evans, and he was with a woman in a yeah, he was parked on the side of the road late at night with a young woman. This was in high school, and it was like a foggy night. They were near like some orange groves or something, and this like guy in an old cowboy duster just marched right by their car and like just was gone. And he looked, and it was kind of a foggy night, but it was did not explain how this figure could emerge and disappear so quickly. And later he was like doing some dives online, and other people have had experience on this same Route 272, it's called, of this like weird cowboy ghost who roams that road. And we actually like made a short film about it in high school, but sadly that's long since lost. Maybe it's sad. Maybe it wasn't
It's a
ever meant
ghost
to.
itself. It's a
Yeah,
ghost of
maybe it was just never meant to see the light
yeah.
of day.
Got
Yeah.
your ghost movies. Yeah, that. Oh yeah, that's something that's there. I mean that's the good question. I mean, like, what exactly is a ghost? I mean, there's definitely experts paranormal and stuff. Kai talks a lot about my the co-host here, our expert here at the Get Warped, and also programmer at the Balboa Theater for Super Shangri-La. Um, talks a lot about he did a ghost hunt in theater number one, the big theater at Balboa, and talked and those people have talked to the ghost, and people have had their experiences of talking with it. His experience was much later in life, in an apartment in Los Angeles, where he had to bring in a psychic and all that stuff to exhume the ghost. On that end, but then people like associate ghosts also with possession. Um, the running joke is it's funny you mentioned the cowboy is that ghosts always tend to be from a certain era that is from long ago, and it's not like
Yeah.
some dude that especially like we talk about the pandemic. Now we're 6 years out, a lot of people passed away, a lot of people have died. Why do we not see people in modern dress with a remote instead of like a six-shooter or a pail bucket, on that end, or someone like on that? And it's interesting like when they encounter that. But yeah, there's like poltergeists and paranormal activity and what have you. And it's one of those things. Yeah, I say I have a lot of dreams where I'm like I get possessed by something and I wake up like, oh, it's just a dream kind of thing. But that's like my most encounter. I personally want to see a ghost. I have not met or seen a ghost um in this
Yeah,
time.
it's funny because we would also mess around with Ouija boards and stuff.
Oh,
And
Florida man stuff going
oh
on
yeah,
there.
exactly. And
Yeah.
uh and it was always, there was sort of this sense when, that I remember, gosh, I wish that I had John and Chad here with me because they could speak to this more. But there was definitely like some weird experiences because Chad had made his own Ouija board,
Oh.
and at a certain point, someone who was like an acquaintance, I guess, of his like freaked out that about using the Ouija board and like destroyed it and had like some bad trip just off of a Ouija board. It was I don't know, there's a lot of stories like that from our like adolescence of just like dabbling with dark forces and then someone in our orbit just had a really bad experience.
Mm.
But we maybe just because we've always been had a friendly relationship with the supernatural. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why we've come out unscathed.
You ain't afraid of no ghost. You're friends with the ghost, you know?
Yeah, that's what I like to think.
Which I think is interesting, yeah, especially the movies you've been making in the horror genre, particularly. But yeah, the Ouija board thing is interesting. What's the dial? I always, every interview, I always mess up the
The
dial
planchette.
planchette.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear that a lot from me. Oh, what's that dial thing? Maybe because my mom was like, "Don't mess around with that stuff." And that's interesting that you bring that up because of so Florida Man, they play around with like a Parker Brothers like board, Ouija board. Kai talks about how when he was getting the ghost that was in his apartment in Los Angeles out or connected with the psychic had an experience coming to the apartment and in the alleyway saw two men in the 70s like fighting like they were dressed up in like like very 70s tight white beaters like something from like Boogie Nights almost you can imagine and she's like does anyone have a Ouija board here and then Kai talked about how this Ouija board was used at some point I don't know if it was with them you can listen to the an earlier part of this but the psychic was saying, not against it. And it's interesting that Chad made a real one as well, or his own one, which I hear is even extra conduiting special. But it's essentially think of it as a phone book, and you just open it up and start dialing random numbers. And then you're going to start just opening doors and all kinds of stuff, not things that you want to meet or want to get answers from, but just random entities are just going to start coming out on that end. And I think a lot of people that's why they're very like sensitive to that on that end. So that's interesting that someone you've talked about in that connection with a real was this the same board or was this a different board you were talking about?
This is well,
Yeah.
I'm sure Chad has made several Ouija boards throughout his life.
Anubis,
Like
what are you
yeah, I know
doing?
I'm hesitant to speak for him.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah. Well,
don't want to
I
botch the
love to have
story,
Chad
but
on the show.
I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like I have a very vivid memory of being in high school and he had one that he'd made out of like cardboard and a Sharpie. Like this wasn't like a woodworking project, but that's the one that I remember very vividly.
Oh, that's
And we had
funny.
there was this abandoned house near my house that we affectionately called the crack house, where we were crazy at this age. We would just go in there at night.
Yeah.
Like, what if we had, it's amazing we never ran into anybody because always be like fresh graffiti there. Like, clearly people were there between us. Like, it was like a really sketchy place, but it was like somewhere we could go,
Man, this is like
hopefully
a
meet a
Grady Hendrix
ghost.
novel at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
we would like shoot weird movies there. Like it was, and they eventually knocked it down, probably for the best. But at the time, we really felt like we lost a major
Yeah.
like hangout spot when they
Key
finally
thing, always
demolished the
got to have a
crack house.
location. Got to have a
Yeah.
location. That's the key thing making a movie. Um, yeah, where is this place at? Like this is Northern California or
This is confusing because I was born in Northern California, but I grew up
Mhm.
mostly in like the Central Valley. It's a town called Visalia, just
Oh,
near Fresno. I'd say
yeah, yeah.
Fresno's the biggest like city near it. But then yeah, I moved to the Bay Area in like 2007 and I've been in Northern California ever since. So it's like it's weird because at this point in my life I've now spent more time outside of it probably. Well, no, definitely. Not to date myself too much, but it's
No,
like that is like very much part of my upbringing is like that part of the state, like
yeah.
the
Yeah,
like
my
more conservative, like that part of the Central Valley.
Yeah, Visalia's a huge place. I mean, that's where Larry Clark's Ken Park was made.
Yes, and that was
Yeah,
controversial at the time. Like
I
that
think
that in
still
the
is.
community. Yeah.
That
That was
movie
a
goes
huge deal when
places.
Ken Park shot there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because like most of the stuff that would shoot in Visalia would be like, like but I feel like our big claim to fame was that like Kevin Costner went to our high school for like 1 year. He went to Mount Whitney for 1 year and then he mentions it in Bull Durham. It's like, yes, he mentioned Visalia. But other than that, it's like it's a lot of like Christian movies that
mhm.
shoot in Visalia. It's that kind of stuff.
It's the
And then
town
just
of
like all the
Kevin
weird fucked up
Sorbo.
movies that Phil and I shot there. Like,
Well, I love that because it's as above, so below,
yeah,
as
exactly.
they do. I mean, I mentioning the Ouija board thing too is like Evan talks about the in Florida Man in the also we just had him on as well talking about ghosts, and he mentioned that his uncle played around with ghosts in this ranch in Florida that they filmed the movie at, and they like tried to burn the Ouija board and like the lighter like broke and then all these things like that. This is like back in like the 60s 70s kind of thing, and it's interesting. I didn't think how much Ouija talk we be getting in this thing. I
It's
mean,
funny how it
yeah,
always cycles back to
yeah,
someone trying to destroy the Ouija board. Because to
yeah,
me, that's the dumbest thing to do with a Ouija board,
yeah.
especially if you haven't said goodbye.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That was one thing he mentioned something his uncle, they kept saying AZ, AZ back and forth. I'm like, well, that's the alphabet.
yeah.
Like, like but it could be a Pazuzu that was coming in that has
Or he
now
just
hot.
really likes what's his Joey Zaza from the Godfather Part 3. Maybe he was saying
Oh,
Zaza. Maybe a big Chaz Palminteri fan over here.
Zaza, Zaza,
Is that
yo.
who played him? I don't know.
Joe Montana.
Oh,
Joe
Joey.
Mont
Yeah,
Montana.
okay. Okay. I was
Yeah.
close.
Joey Zaza. Yeah. Oh my gosh. We're talking Godfather 3 now? Oh yeah. You know that there's a connection. Someone works on Godfather 3 that works at the Balboa Theater, by the way.
Francis
Um
Ford Coppola.
oh well, they were an assistant to Coppola around that time. And yeah, so that's funny you mentioned of all the movies.
His
That
best film.
yeah, they're credited on that and Dracula. So I know that for sure
Okay.
on that, and they were yeah pulled fresh out of high school. Hey, and stuff like that. But they can tell their own story at some point about
That's
that.
funny because I
Yeah.
PA'd on Twixt when I was in
Oh
college.
yeah.
His Northern California Val Kilmer vampire movie.
Yeah. Oh man, that must have you have lots of stories on that one. But
Yeah,
not
we don't
maybe
need to
not
get
ghost
into that
stories.
one.
Yeah, I mean on that I was like, but we're here for ghosts. And we're here to talk about movies playing at the Balboa Theater as well. So what you want to call it? So yeah, so this house is totally haunted, just played at Unnamed Footage Fest, which has been a festival grown organically throughout 9 years now at the Balboa Theater. I've been there since UF 2 for the most part. I got it. Talk a little bit about my experiences throughout with that end. So, but then you also, um, this house is totally haunted is a continuation of a movie you played at UF 24. You want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean the word is kind of out, but
yeah.
our whole concept for this movie was because the three of us had made The Ceremony is About to Begin, which was very much like a two-hander. It's set in sort of this ancient Egyptian style cult. And it ends on this note of like this story could keep going. But we always were kind of like, yes, we want to continue with these characters, but we want it to be a totally different concept. We want it to be like a standalone thing where, and this is in fact was one of the questions we asked at that rough cut screening, like, one, have you seen The Ceremony is About to Begin? Two, like, if you didn't, did you feel like you were confused at any point? Like, did you feel like there was extra information that you needed? And universally, everyone who hadn't seen Ceremony was fine. Like, they were able to get it. And I find that that continues to be the case. So the whole idea is we do a standalone sequel, but it would still tie into the first one in really interesting ways that it would reward you to have seen Ceremony. And so much so that, I'm still hearing from like people who got screeners of the movie who didn't necessarily see it enough and are just seeing it now, where they're like, I had no idea this was a sequel to Ceremony, which is hilarious to me because another reason that we did like sort of this stealth sequel, secret sequel thing is like I got the sense not a lot of people saw Ceremony. I mean, at least compared to Red Snow, the movie I did before
Yeah.
that. So I also kind of wanted to make it this thing where you don't have to have seen the first one. You don't even have to have heard of the first one. And that's why it's called This House is Totally Haunted. It's like a whole new story, but it's just these two characters from the previous movie are in it, and you're still continuing on their
Yeah.
story. So it's worked out really well. And I had told the UF crew, hey, don't spill the beans about this being a sequel, because I feel like the people, like if ever there was an audience of people that I don't know who have seen Ceremony, like this will be the crowd for that. Like where it'll click for them at a certain point,
Hmm.
like, oh, this is a sequel to that movie. And it's funny because it happens at different points for different people. Like for me, the big reveal is early when because it's about these ghost hunters who are investigating this supposed haunting of a cult survivor, and you find out that the name of the cult that he survived is the Osiris Collective, which is said a million times in the ceremony. Like that's kind of the main fixture of the first movie. But if you're one of these guys who, sees 300 horror movies a year and like is inundated with screeners for zero budget horror movies, that might happen later. Like I heard from a guy recently where it's like he saw the actors, it didn't click. There was all this talk of a cult called the Osiris Collective. It didn't click. It didn't happen until someone takes a thumb drive and is showing you footage of the previous movie where it finally clicked. And he was like, oh, I get it now. This
Yeah.
is a sequel. And I've also heard from people who were like, who saw this one first, went back through the power of Tubi to see the original, and are like, "Oh, I actually like it better this way. Like, I like that I saw This House is Totally Haunted first, and then this is like a prequel. It's almost like Missing in Action 2, where
Oh,
they flipped
okay.
them, where
Yeah.
you get like the action-packed one first, and then you get the more meditative like prequel after." So,
That's a good
although
way of
these were
looking at
shot
it.
in sequence, so
Yeah.
just years apart. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a fun journey to see people either discovering that it's a sequel, being surprised, not caring that it's a sequel. I've experienced every flavor talking to
Mhm.
people, and it's exciting because this is the first festival we played. This is the world premiere, so hopefully I have many more of these conversations to come as people kind of figure out what this movie is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that I and going into that friends and family screening up in SAC at the Dreamland, I was like, because there was a little talk of like, oh, you might put me in it, and then you cut that version out, which hilarious when at the very end it's mentioned. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I always tell people that, like that there's a scene there that did not get filmed.
Yeah.
Um, but also, I mean, I think. I would like to say I championed Ceremony. I know that you felt very 50-50 on it because I know that Red Snow is it's a major motion picture or a major feature for you, and you've been definitely that's the Bayless, the script that you have. They're bigger movies, and these ones are made on a much more micro scale budget. But it's interesting. Like I love that you have a team that is able to come together on that end. Also, I think for me, and I think I sent when after I saw the screening, what makes this special, where I like that idea of the missing action too, is that House feels more contained. It's straightforward more because I think, but this goes into also ceremony, and I think also what I relate to Florida Man a little bit on. But House is you're with people that have no connection. That's your entry point. Have no connection to ceremony, and then if you've seen ceremony, you're like, oh, and that click that will happen. But you can totally watch them separately. You don't have to like, oh, get to that. And I think, but that deepens that whole element. I think with ceremony, yeah, it's like you said, it's a two-hander. It starts off as a fake doc or a doc about this guy who's clearly dealing with some pretty heavy stuff in his life, addiction and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, it quickly flips into this sort of satire, and then all of a sudden, full-on horror, like just absolutely monster movie status. And yeah, so I think there's that balance of that, and cosmically also, Thomas Burke, who cut the Power Hour, which is very big kicker off for the UF community every year. Put the Power Hour, I guess, was mostly stuff from the last couple years that they cut together from found footage movies, and you drink after every clip. The sermon is about to begin, not by any other than Tom being like, "I want to put this in here," putting that big chunk of the or sequence of the ending towards the ending of ceremony in that, and then all of a sudden the new world premiered House right then and
Yeah.
there. So yeah, I just it's so it's I don't know, it's all very cosmic too, like, but yeah, like Florida Man has a similar setup of, it's very much Evan Jordan's journey through his road to of growing up, then on this, and then going to this ranch on his uncle's bird ranch, and then dealing with drug addiction, meth, getting clean, then coming back to his family house, and then realizing most people have like been telling him, oh, there's a lot of ghosts out here, and family stories, and then all of a sudden be like, well, I want to contact, see who's out here because I have these ghost experiences when I was out here, and then switches over to a horror adjacent movie where it's more of like it's interesting. It's very similar to that first section of Ceremony where it's like, oh, there's this guy dealing with stuff and he's clearly pushing buttons to get an experience out, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden becomes like, oh, it's not a documentary anymore, it's a horror movie. And then
And I like that mix a lot too. I
yeah.
mean, when we make these movies, we've made two of them now. We're laughing the whole time. Like we view them as very dark comedies first and
Mhm.
foremost. And it was funny seeing the reaction to Ceremony where some people just didn't get that aspect of it. Like to me, these movies, like just Chad's character Anubis or Andy in this new
Yeah.
one, it's like just listening to him like go off on a tangent is just so funny to me. He has a bit in the new one where he talks about how he was the graphic designer for Dead and Company, and this is
Yeah.
just stuff that he's inventing on the spot, and it just so like Phil and I were had to leave the room. We had to like I was manning the camera and I had to leave because I was like laughing so hard.
Yeah.
uh like
Anubis is this
before,
great grifter. It's the big
yeah,
grift.
and
It's
like
it's
who
yeah.
knows if that story is
Yeah.
true or not. I mean, he
Yeah.
tells a similar story in the first movie about like inventing a porno website called JizzTube that's
Yeah.
similarly like a very detailed story. And these are just
Yeah.
things that he invents, and that's kind of, I think that that's why. You mentioned I was 50-50 at one time with Ceremony. I think that that was a movie that was shot over the course of many years. Like we did the first chunk of it. We didn't really know if we kind of just wanted an excuse to shoot something at this weird location we had access to, but it was unfinished. I did like an early rough cut screening in like 2019 at the
Hmm.
Roxy before COVID,
Yeah.
before I even shot Red Snow,
Yeah.
which ended up
Oh
coming out
wow.
before Ceremony.
Yeah.
And then it's like COVID happened. I was like, I think I had a cut of it I wasn't happy with, and then I went back and I shot more material
Mm.
in LA. Like we rented out like an escape room and did the whole tomb sequence, redid
Hmm.
the quote unquote mummies, the lobotomized people
Yeah.
who are in cause. Uh, and I felt like at the end of that whole process, like, yeah, this is a movie I feel pretty good about.
Hmm.
And then when we got excited about telling another, like by the time Ceremony was on the festival circuit, we were already deep in the planning stages of shooting House, and we shot House in 2024. So this is a quicker turnaround for this
Hmm.
one.
Yeah.
But it's interesting seeing the reactions to this one where I feel like it's going to be less polarizing than Ceremony just because we had more of a handle on what this thing
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
Like I think that's the big difference is like, oh, just taking the things that worked about the first one and just making it move more and
Hmm.
like be a little bit more of a fun yarn and less of a like hangout movie as the
That's
first one was.
that's interesting. I think you probably mentioned to me because I remember you told me about Ceremony after we showed Red Snow had another hole in the head.
Yeah.
And I was and we were just coming, still actually was the pandemic actually. It was around Christmas of 2021.
Yeah.
And I was like, and actually Ceremony to me felt like it was like, oh, this guy shot this during the pandemic with his friends because there's a lot of setup there where it's like, where is everybody? I don't know. It's just two people in a room
Yeah.
for a lot of it, and that's. You probably mentioned that it was shot. That was shot before Redstone, but it never clicked in my head. It was just more of like, oh, I get it, like and that's this interesting balance that's going on with found footage, where I think most people associate found footage with Blair Witch and Cannibal Holocaust, all the and Paranormal Activity, and it's always like, well, it's a low budget movie, or it's definitely something where a lot of I think definitely with the conversation has grown so much now. I mean, if you look at the poster, like actually what is shown and what is considered, unnamed footage fest, like Cinema in Public, which is my friend Jorge Torres's movies, where there isn't an actual like, oh, we found a camera or someone shooting a camera. It's more of like, hey, this is something kind of an Anubis thing with Chad. Oh, this is all shot Fat Tuesday in New Orleans during Mardi Gras with some actors. Actually, one of the actors is in the drama, I just realized. Um, and so she's the lead. She's a serial killer, killing people in like public during Mardi Gras and stuff. It's a great movie. We showed it last year at another
What's
at
the name of
unnamed
that one again?
Fat Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
They
Oh,
they
I'm gonna
they
add that
created
to
a
my
different
list.
genre for it, but it was structurally there was like an outline, but it was most of the dialogue is improvisational. It takes over one night and stuff like that. So there's ways around it on that thing and finding it where you don't have to be like, oh, I found a camera, like what do we kind of
Yeah, I
go
mean
from there?
that's the tricky thing about found
Yeah,
footage, and
yeah.
for us, we've kind of found this place where it's sort of like there is the initial excuse for the filming, but in both films, like it is somewhat edited. There is a little bit of music and stuff, and
Hmm.
it's a little bit of this idea that in both movies, the footage ends up with a very specific person. It's the last person who's on camera and that person edited the footage you saw. And the first one, he gave some reason for that
Yeah,
because he was trying to like show the world this thing.
yeah,
Now it's a little, it's gotten muddier,
yeah.
but we're just hoping that people don't care because it's required for these movies to function.
That's an
Um,
interesting take on it because I think that's a question that's always asked, like who found this stuff? Who actually put this story together,
yeah,
kind of thing, and on that journey. But one thing I wanted to highlight also is this Bay List that you are a part of, and I think that's pretty. This is a San Francisco based movie theater, Balboa in San Francisco. It's turning 100 this year. The big 100 party is happening. Um, but the Bay List, can you talk more about what that is and also what kind of the process of it and what that means for you and it's particularly about screenwriting, not just so much production on that end.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I've always had an interest in screenwriting. I've always, written my own kind of spec scripts that I wouldn't necessarily ever have the budget to direct myself. But, I always am sending stuff into contests. I encourage, every writer I talk to do the same because you just never know, like something crazy might happen and something did for me. I think it was just this last fall. I can't remember who told me about this opportunity. It might have been Gavin Murray, who shot Red Snow and is a good friend of ours. But yeah, it's basically Rafael Casal in conjunction with the Blacklist decided to do this contest for um, basically Bay Area screenwriters. The scripts don't have to be set in the Bay Area. Mine's like a Texas set, kind of like, Southern Gothic type movie. And yeah, they got a bunch of people sending in spec scripts. The only requirements were you had to have some relationship to the Bay. And for me, I was born in Hayward and went to college in San Francisco and lived in San
Yep.
Francisco for a long time.
Fellow alumni that we are
Yeah,
here.
SF
Yeah.
State alum. Yeah, but it's like a big Gator podcast here.
I know. It
And yeah,
is. Yeah. Yeah.
I ended up being one of the 10, and it's been great. Like and I've gotten to meet the in some capacity I've gotten to meet some of the other screenwriters just over Zoom and stuff. Um, and it's been interesting because I've done screenwriting contests before. Sometimes there's a cash prize, sometimes it's just like, it's just the glory of getting it. What this has been like industry sort of contact. So you get set up for all these general meetings where you just like pitch, either the script that won the contest or just other stuff. And like luckily for me, I just have a bunch of other stuff that I've written. And so like nothing is really materialized from that and maybe nothing will, but it is cool like getting to have meetings with like some pretty like major Bay Area companies.
Yeah.
It's I don't know if I want to just go on a name drop marathon, but just like you can kind of imagine like who that would be
I
in the
think
Bay.
I think his name starts with an R and ends and has
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yes.
not him personally,
So
but his company for
proximity,
sure.
yeah. What's the name
Yeah.
of the company again? It's a
Yeah, proximity.
proximity, yeah. So,
Steph Curry's company as well, Benjamin Bratt's company. Like
oh
it's
yeah.
it's like it's so that kind of thing is cool. Just like it's so funny how much the industry has changed because when I used to have general meetings like this, I would have to drive my ass to LA. I'd have to like go to some overpriced like juice bar because no one wanted to just get a beer. And
Yeah,
uh and they'd always be like, "Oh, you have to be in LA to be a
yeah.
screenwriter, blah 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 blah. You
What
can't
are you
live in San
doing? Where are you
Francisco."
going? Now
Yeah,
everyone's
and
like,
then like
yeah.
you'd never hear from him again anyways. It's like, well, I'm glad I didn't
Yeah,
move to LA based on what like this one douchebag told me.
yeah.
But it's funny how I guess it's COVID that scrambled all this because now all my meetings from this thing are over Zoom. People are super nice. The question of do I live in Northern California? If it even does come up, it's more like, oh, that's cool. Like there's not this weird like ultimatum hanging over you
Mm,
of having to move to LA. And like, I mean, that's great for people who've made that move.
yeah.
I'm a NorCal guy. Just like
But
this is just where my roots are.
didn't you shoot your first feature prep school in Los Angeles though, or
No,
no?
that was all Bay
Oh no.
Area. Yeah, that
I thought
was
that was yeah,
remember that?
that's our cosmic connection too, because my friend Marius Leyes, who I produced a couple of my shorts around that time,
No,
and it's funny,
Marius.
mentioned that he worked on this movie called Prep School, and then Sean Blau, who edited Montalos, a short that I met through I shot with Marius, that actually got me essentially. If it wasn't, I didn't submit that to another hole in the head, then none of this would actually be happening on a certain level.
Oh yeah, Sean Blau's also
Yeah.
yeah, those guys are I mean
He's a
Sean
wild
Blau in
guy. That guy's
particular is a good
wild.
yeah, I mean I've known
Yeah,
him since SF State and
yeah,
he was like I mean I went to school with a lot of cool cats, but he
yeah,
was like someone who was like very clearly like an auteur, like had a
yeah,
real voice behind his stuff.
yeah,
And he's who I met Denise Cisneros through. I mean, well, to a degree, like he cast Denise in all of his
yeah.
stuff, and
Clay, I think
that's
that was the one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was in Clay as like the Clay monster, and
Oh,
uh, yeah, and
yeah. It's funny. Deep
uh,
dive.
it's funny, and like he's been a great kind of
Hmm.
supporter of my work over the years, and Denise went on to star in Red Snow. So yeah, all this is connected. Yeah, but yeah, to go back to the Bay list,
Yes.
it's been really interesting. Like it's I wish that I had more to say about it. Like
Well,
I
half of
think
this
that
job is just taking meetings. And so, like, for me,
yeah.
like, this is what I do with the podcast. I'm doing like half meeting, half media,
Yeah,
because
and
just to cut through that kind of thing.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny because like it's a crazy thing that's happened, and yet at the same time, like it's quite possible nothing will come
Yeah.
of it other than just, and that's fine. I feel like that's
But
I'm
nothing
I'm
can
at the
come from this
point now.
industry at the end.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I'm at a comfortable place in my own like quote unquote
Yeah.
career where, I have a steady day job that's related to film and editing, and then I have my own weird movies that I get to make with my friends that like
Hmm.
is like a creative outlet where and then the third part is like meetings to maybe possibly probably not do something with a real budget someday.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of a good spot that I'm in right now. It's, because
Yeah.
I feel like in my 20s, sorry if I'm
Yeah.
now on therapist Benji's couch, but I feel like in my
Just
20s I would
taking
have,
notes. Just taking
yeah,
notes. Yeah.
in my 20s I would have been like, God, I hope this Bayless thing pans out or I'm dead. And like
Yeah.
now it's kind of nice to have be able to be a little more chilled out about it of
Hmm.
like. I'm married, I got a kid.
Yeah.
I'm very set. I'm not gonna run off to LA because someone tells me to,
Yeah.
and
That's interesting. I did not know that you didn't do your, LA time. I personally did most of my 20s, in LA.
oh, interesting.
And so it's funny, I didn't know you were born in Hayward. But long story short, we've talked about all that. But yeah, that's where for me it was like, well, I got to get on set. This is right when everything was coming into your pocket, so you still had to
Hmm.
go to film school just to get access to some stuff. Um, so I always say, like, I don't know, there's a mixture of things. I love Los Angeles. I think a lot of people are like have that stigma about it. But it's funny. I love the ocean too. I love the beach. But the further I got away from the beach and the more less I worked in the industry, the more I was like, LA's like, this is my place sometimes. Because sometimes I think it's a frustrating thing in the Bay Area is that you are around tech. And I'm glad I missed all that app tech world stuff because I
Hmm.
heard a lot about, like, oh, you missed all this. Like, you didn't have to hear, like, what blind spotting, funny you mentioned Rafa Cassell talked about. Like,
Yeah.
all that was just like, yeah, my dad worked in tech until he burnt out, became a truck driver, things like that. So I knew I did not want to be associated in that world at all and stuff like that. So it was just interesting balance on that end. But in my 20s, yeah, I was just like LA was like the pipeline. But I also felt like every time I got a major part of either on production or developing a collective, it was not in Los Angeles, and it's just very interesting that now as everyone talks about in the industry and the struggles there, that yeah, you don't need to be in LA to do major stuff in the industry. Like I just thought that was funny. I was like, I address in LA, but I'm in Utah shooting this now. I'm in Texas shooting this. I'm in Mexico. I'm in Europe. It's like,
I mean,
what's
don't get
going
me
on here?
wrong,
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
wish more stuff was shooting in LA. And
Yeah,
maybe I should have spent some time in LA. I do like it, but I just
yeah.
always have my work for whatever reason has always kept me tethered to
Mm.
Northern California. Like,
Okay.
and I say Northern California because
Yeah.
I'm gradually drifting further up
Yes,
north.
everyone has been exiled out of the Bay Area. I mean, I'm always sweating bullets, especially right now with
Yeah,
some stuff. Yeah,
it was like SF, then Berkeley, then San Leandro, now
yeah,
SAC. You'll probably catch up to me next year. I'll be in Weed,
yeah. Well, I think it's also funny, like how we met. I think is very interesting. Like we met in Portland, which
Yeah.
at the Portland Horror Fest, and that's when I heard these names. I was like, wait, who are these people? And then I think you and your family were just about to move out of Berkeley, and I was like, why? I've been living here for the last few years, and we just never
Yeah.
really like connected, other than like, oh wait, you knew Marius, you knew Sean, and then Gavin's become a big source of stuff, and on that end, I mean, it's fun to be on his podcast and as well. And so it's just interesting, like these ships in the night that kind of go by in the industry. It's a big world, but it's a small world at the same time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right about the Bayless. I just also think not, anything in this industry, like I'm riding on a high right now with Florida Man being like, "Hey, here's a feature, it has my real, it's a real movie now, and it has my name on it," and I'm really proud of what Evan's done. It's been a long road. It still has stuff to do. Planning on stuff. It's funny. I'm getting texts from him right now about a spreadsheet about places we're gonna probably tour the movie once it's ready later. And I mean, the world premiere. You know how it is. It's like this house so haunted is like you're doing festivals. You're probably gonna do another cut, or you think this is kind of gonna be
I mean,
yeah.
I'm gonna tinker with it throughout the run.
Hmm.
I think there was a time when I really thought I was gonna go in and do more of the crazy like ghost stuff, like do a lot of
Hmm.
wire removal, like trash the place and really have the ghosts freak out at certain points. But then what I found is like even when I shot stuff like that, I wasn't using it in the cut. Like the edit is kind of telling you what the movie wants to be, especially in found footage. And
Hmm.
like the movie's not as interested in the ghosts as it is Chad. Much as like in the previous movie, we're not as so interested in like what's going on in that tomb as like what's going on in Chad's mind
Yeah.
or Anubis's mind, I should say.
Yeah.
And so I think that the things that I'm going to change are more in like the mix of the film. I might, there'll be small changes. I did make some pretty dramatic cuts from the version you saw at the Dreamland. Like I think
Hmm.
it was already a pretty short movie, but I still shaved off a couple minutes, especially from the beginning, because the feedback I got was just like, we need to get to that house faster. We can't
Hmm.
spend so much time on this haunted doll
Yeah.
that opens the movie.
Which
Uh,
that doll connects a lot of things though with those
it
characters and
ends
what they're
up, yeah,
doing.
but
Yeah.
but I found that less is
The
more
Ray.
with that
Yeah.
aspect of the movie. But yeah,
Yeah.
and and looking, looking ahead to like more festivals and stuff, I'm really glad that we had the chance to premiere it at UF just because if ever there was like a home crowd for this kind of thing, it's the UF
Yeah.
audiences. And I regret not premiering the previous one there, but I didn't think it was quite ready. And then it ended up playing Panic Fest, but in a virtual slot. So it didn't really
Hmm.
even feel like a premiere. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think we're, even if we don't play that many more festivals, we were really happy to, and I say we, meaning John, Chad, like the rest of the team.
Hmm.
Um, and also just the fact that, another big part of it that I haven't mentioned is we hired these two improvisers, Alex and Carrie, who are effectively the leads of the movie.
Yeah.
Because that was and for them to be able to have this big coming out thing where they're able to see it with a crowd that isn't
Hmm.
family and friends. I think that was great for them
Yeah.
because they hadn't really done something like that before. And I think it's kind of funny how these things evolve because with ceremony we had improvisers in the first 10 minutes for the mockumentary thing. And then on this one it's like, well, let's just make those like that was such a great
Yeah.
feature of the movie. Like let's make them kind of like the stars. And that's
Hmm.
worked out so beautifully. And I think that, looking ahead to the future, I think that's going to sort of be sort of our formula is bringing in some ringers to to
Yeah.
bounce off of.
Yeah, no, definitely a thing on that end. Speaking of which, just kind of series of pop culture ghosts. Favorite movies about ghosts, favorite music songs about ghosts at all, or favorite books about ghosts at
Oh
all?
man.
Yeah,
Man, you're catching me. I need some time to think about
yeah,
this. And there's a lot.
yeah.
Um, I actually really liked. It's a recent one, but Ghost Stories. Did
Hmm.
you see that? It's an anthology film. I thought that that was really well done. Ghost Watch, of course, is
Oh
one that
yeah,
I like a lot.
one of the original found footage.
Yeah, well, and speaking of found footage, Lake
Yeah,
Mungo, which is one that Chad turned
yeah,
me on to. That's very few movies legitimately unsettle me. I'm
yeah.
just so desensitized
Well,
from
you're a
seeing some
family man. That's like the
stuff.
ultimate, like
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's the
even
modern
long before.
Shining.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
even long
yeah,
before I was a family man, just like that really got under my skin, that
yeah,
movie. And I think that I mean, prior to that, I was already a fan of the Blair Witch Project. I remember seeing that in theaters,
yeah,
probably at too young an age, and that was really effective. But that was just like the second time a found footage movie, like really, or like just broadly across horror, like that was just a
yeah.
very effective. So Lake Mungo has to be high up there too.
I'm so glad
And
you mentioned like Mungo because I think that's something I might do a whole podcast just on for the Get Warped podcast. That film or that being a key piece of sort of paranormal, cryptid, all the things that we talk about on the Get Warped. God, that's such a great movie. And funny enough, After Dark Film Festival was the one that did that. It was one of the key ones that
yeah, it was
not
one of
super,
the few
yeah.
great movies to
Yeah.
come out of that whole experience.
I remember I was working at Amoeba, and that's who this guy. It's funny enough, he was from Santa Rosa. His name's Shaloni Sella. He does actually like photography for a lot of celebrities now. We were working at Amoeba, and we were just talking about horror movies, cult stuff. I was the cult guy. My friend Ben, the other Ben, was a horror guy in the Amoeba in L.A. And uh, um, Sella just was like telling me, "Oh, he was from Santa Rosa too. We were just kind of trading." He's like, "Hey man, you got to watch this one, Lake Mungo." And I'm just like, "Oh, cool." I'm like, "Okay, I'll get around to it." And it's always these kind of special moments I've had working in a video store throughout or seeing the end of the video store, now being a part of the video store conversation and seeing it grow again on
Yeah.
that end where you meet someone who is like, hey, if you like this you might never thought about, but check this out. And I think Lake Mungo and that conversation that it starts, and yeah, probably one of the most like under your skin, Movies that I also show people who are like trying to get into found footage. We're like, oh, well, what's something that's not like what's like Paranormal Activity or Blair Witch? I'm like, oh, Lake Mungo.
Yeah,
That's
and
a great one.
it's a great example of how like a true mockumentary style can be
Hmm.
effective too. Like just like a fake documentary. I mean, around the time the Blair Witch Project came out, there's also Curse of the Blair Witch, which is like the made for TV.
Which I like more than the Blair Witch,
Yeah, I mean, a
actually.
lot of
Yeah,
people do. I mean,
yeah.
and that's something that Chad and I debate about a lot too. Is like there's something, and originally it's so interesting. There was a book I read called 8 Days in the Woods, which is like this, thick making of Blair Witch Project, and that was the original idea. Is it would be more of a mockumentary, and they'd just be interspersed with these cuts of what ended
Hmm.
up becoming the Blair Witch Project. But it's interesting that that started life as a mockumentary before pivoting to full found
Yeah.
footage.
And then I think it's funny you mentioned you and Chad were growing up doing that in the house. My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix
Oh,
is
that's a
is
great book. Yeah, that's
that just
actually I've
reminded me
read a
so
lot of
much of
Grady
that.
Hendrix, and that's
Yeah.
still my favorite of his.
Yeah.
That and Horror Store, I think, are my
Okay. Horror
favorites.
Store, yeah, that Horror Store's that fake coffee table when you're like, wait, what am I?
Yeah.
And that's actually like kind of like a Lake Mungo where it's like the unreliable narrator and like what you're
Yeah.
into. So you got some good stuff, Sean. Glad we got into the root of that
Well,
kind of
and
thing. Yeah.
speaking, you got me thinking about something else. Like
Yeah.
speaking of those movies that went under the radar and you'd hear about from other people talking about Session 9,
Yeah.
which I was late to, but
Did you
I
watch
almost
Infirmary?
I did
Infirmary.
watch Infirmary. Yeah,
That
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 was
that was I want to try to team that up with Session 9 at some point in a program kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thing.
infirmary's
Yeah.
great, and it's interesting because you leave. You always like your hazy memory of Session 9 is that it is found footage, but it's actually just early digital, so it just like looks
Yeah.
like shit in the most charming way.
Oh, that's
Session
Brad.
9, not infirmary.
That's Brad Anderson. I mean, Infirmary, I think is that explores so many levels, but that yeah, shooting in an asylum and and that experience where I think Infirmary goes the further distance of we'll never leave the asylum. It takes place over one
Yeah.
night. Session 9 has these like back and forth. I mean, it has like some pretty big actors, some actors that don't get a lot of respect for their maybe they're like David Caruso in that
I'm
movie. I
taking
think
off my sunglasses as you
oh,
say
but
that.
he's got that such that working class,
Oh yeah, he's
redheaded,
great in that.
feisty guy, and Peter Mullen, who, I mean, that goes into a whole level. I met the guy at Sundance on my first Sundance I went to, and interviewed him, and he just told me like, he's like, hey, you're young because I was in my early 20s. It's like, it's like, everyone wants to make their feature film, and every time you hit your next milestone in a decade, 30, 40, it's like you try to tell yourself, I'm gonna make a movie. I'm gonna be Orson Welles. No, I'm gonna be this guy. I'm gonna be this guy. And it's like that's like, oh man, Peter Mullen's like that's Swanee right there from Train Spotting also. So there's just like there's so much there I connect to that film. But also that just mentioning that's like it's such a that's again, Sean. Good picks. Good
Well,
picks.
and one that I
Yeah.
feel like doesn't get talked about as much, and just
Yeah.
just stick one more in here. Did you ever
Yeah.
see? And this is different than Ghost Stories, which was
Hmm.
like 2018 or something like this. Ghost Story from 1981
Yes.
with like Fred Astaire and like all these old
Yeah.
actors.
Based off the Peter Schwab novel.
Yes,
So yeah, yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's one that I was late to as well, that I just like, wow, this is more people should be talking about this movie. Like I love the setup of about a bunch of like elderly gentlemen who get together and drink brandy and tell
Yeah.
ghost
That's
stories
sort
and
of the
like
era though, the House of Long Shadows. They were doing a lot of that back then. But
yeah, and
yeah, that's a great
it's
one. Yeah.
really it holds up. Like it's, there's some campy stuff in it, but it's
Yeah, you're
the
veering
light
into
plays out.
Kai's territory. That's what Kai likes to show is those kind of movies.
Yeah,
60s, 70s, 80s. Yeah,
it's like a
stuff.
classy, but a little bit sleazy in a good way.
Yeah.
It's well done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those definitely some excellent ones. I think I mentioned Head Full of Ghosts. I highly recommend checking that out. I think it's finally there. There was a script that floated around for a long time for it. A friend of mine had at a production house, and then they couldn't. It's that is a found footage ghost movie, but it's found footage book style where it's like blog and and old TV show and recollections, and then people's journals, and then modern interview and stuff like that. So it's like it's a really special film,
Sort of
especially
an
when you're
epistolary type thing.
yeah. And I'm trying to remember. I have his books in the back. I'm trying to remember the author's name. You know, if someone's listening, like it's so and so. Great. He's up there with Grady Hendrix. If not, he does a lot of writes a lot. You know, it's him, Stephen Graham Jones, and Grady Hendrix are like the top three right now, and of horror writers on that end. But yeah, from here, I mean, I'm pretty much. I mean, that's kind of the structure I go for. But anything else you want to talk about ghost wise? Anything? Trying to think.
I
Yeah.
want to touch briefly, if we may,
hmm
the midnight film at UF. I was only there Saturday night, and so I didn't get to see a whole lot.
Oh yes, I know
Yeah,
what
but
this is.
I just
Yeah.
want to say I saw my own film again.
hmm
I saw I saw Infirmary. I saw Zebra Hooves,
We
which is
watched
a
that
funny.
together.
Yeah, we watched
That's
that together.
it's my guy David Dawson. That guy.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
familiar with David's work.
Yeah.
I was not disappointed. That was a fun time. Well, I don't know if fun is the right word, but I was
Zebra Hooves is probably the least fun one because you can have fun with Flesh Games and Leech, but yeah,
there were
it's
some laughs to be
yeah,
had,
there is
dark
some
laughs.
dark laughs. Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
yeah, I think his work is really interesting. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Whiteface because I
yes.
didn't know anything about this. I consider myself like pretty plugged in on this sort of stuff, but can you tell the listeners about Whiteface?
Well, what is it that people will tell me about it? Because it's you talk to anyone enough, they'll have their own story, their own opinion. I'll just go into what I know of it. It played at UF 24, really when it was UF 36 hours because it was, you know, it was the ending piece.
But
And
it was not officially sent in by someone, right? This is because it's all just been
that I
found
do not know.
tapes.
That I do not know. And the person that has been programming it has said, I can't tell any more about that.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
what I can say, and I know that they've been trying to make Reddit, I think there's a lot more also they want to expand the lore on. There are distinct things that clearly this movie was not made 20 some years ago on a VHS tape. It is something, I mean, the Minecraft posters, like right
Yeah,
there in
there's
the
also
beginning.
like
People on
a Better Man
phones.
poster. Yeah.
Yeah. There's actually a great sequence, I think, that's one of the stronger ones, and I think really sticks out with this short version. By the way, you watched the 90-minute version or 80-minute, 80 to 90 which I think is definitely a great consumer for a midnight, a more oh, I can take this meal because it's definitely like it's a it's a 7 course thing. Oh, then when it was on YouTube and then got pulled down from YouTube it was around. They always say it's like 4 hours. No, it's like 3 hours and 42 minutes or something is
Yeah.
the original
But
version.
broadly for people who have no idea what we're
Yeah.
talking about, what is whiteface?
Just think about if you. I'm a big fan of Maniac, the 1980 Bill Lustig movie.
Yeah.
Um, just think guy grabs a video camcorder that is similar, probably seen The Dark Knight one too many times, and just has his little camera and just and stalks people in specifically in the Hollywood Boulevard area for a night.
And his face
And
is painted white.
yeah, that's right. But I
Yeah.
think he watched The Dark Knight a lot because like Lindsay, my Lindsay, it's just funny we both have partners named Lindsay. And so she kind of took it as is that yeah, that's like, oh, this guy is clearly like just like the Heath Ledger diaries when he was becoming Joker kind of has a similar vibe to if you've looked at those diaries that he was scrawling into.
That's
And
funny. I
so
didn't pick up on that at
yeah.
all. That's so interesting.
Well, I think that character that shows up who like likes him and has that whole conversation and kind of reminds me of someone very special that unfortunately has passed away recently because of just variations of living pretty hard life in Hollywood and stuff like that. Um, is kind of like a Harlequin kind of character to me. Like it's almost like that's what I kind of caught from definitely the second this time around because I've been able to consume it because when I watched it on UF 24, it was definitely like put it on in the background and just sort of like zone in and out on it kind of thing. And then watching this 90-minute version, like, okay, I can see certain relationships and what have you kind of develop. I remember you said to me, you're like, oh, is this Poughkeepsie tapes? And I was like, I don't know what it is. I should have guessed it, but I was like, they already played this at UF
Because it was
24.
a mystery movie
Yeah,
because the rights to this thing are very unknown. Like, because it seems to have
yeah,
proliferated with, I mean, if you believe the lore that just VHS tapes with the word whiteface have appeared across the
yeah.
country and that it actually caught on, like that
Hmm.
people have actually, to some extent, been following it. And it's funny because it speaks to the power of that still exists for me. Like to be honest with you, I'm like less interested in the content of the movie itself and just like
Hmm.
more the way that it's like
Yeah.
it's kind
The
of like
ghost
been able.
story.
Yeah, I mean like
Yeah,
it's like just the story of how it's spread out, and
yeah.
I'm just so curious if that's actually the way that it reached people
Um,
or
it's still developing, I think, as
yeah.
even as we talk. I think there's like I said, it got taken down off YouTube, the original 3 hours and 3.5 hour cut kind of thing. And then Russ was telling me like, yeah, they chopped it down a little to more a little more sizable for the ending of 24, so it was like 2.5 hours. And then you got to see the 90 minute, 80 to 90 minute version that is there. And then yeah, they're building lore. I mean, there's all this stuff on Reddit you can look at. I mean, the festival itself is what's beautiful about it. It's like Murder Death Koreatown, Tontine. These are movies that in particularly don't really actually have like explicit violent. Tontine's pretty violent at the end. I don't know if you know about Tontine. That's kind of almost like Survivor meets Cannibal Holocaust by the end. Um,
These are all movies that
yeah.
you've told me about, Benji.
Yeah,
That's how
well,
I know
because
about
you
them.
can't get these movies.
Yeah.
There's no way of getting them other than if you know somebody who has it on a drive somewhere. These are movies that, in the day and age of like, oh, they took out Batwoman and the Acme
Yeah.
Coyote movies, are like, well, these are films that just like for various reasons the filmmakers just like, no, like I wanted it to be a thing. It got real, and then I either felt like I was offending someone, or there's a copyright issue that will never be able to ever show like of the survive. It's like a lot of stuff in Tontina's Survivor mixed. So Whiteface is something that I think is growing similar to that, where you can't see it anywhere except at or if Sam is presenting it somewhere, kind of thing.
But don't you think
Um,
that's by choice to build a mystique? Because
um,
I feel like that's smart if that's what they're doing.
I think more with this one, probably there's more of
With
that at
whiteface
play.
specifically,
Yeah,
yeah.
with that
Because I
play.
was thinking about this in the life of all these found footage movies. What's kind of tough is like when you see them at a festival, including my own work, this is why I'm
Yeah.
saying this, is like when you're a festival movie, you have a much greater mystique than a year later when you're a Tubi movie and people are half watching you with
I
ads
think
and
the
they're on
Tubi
their
movie
phone.
has definitely Mystique. You know Terrell. That is
Oh, I
that
love
is that is
Tubi.
the
I say
MC for
this with
Tubi.
love. I get checks from Tubi, but
Oh,
it's
well,
like it's
I do
like
too. Oh, I
you're
don't get text, but we're all. I got a movie
we're
on
all part of the
Tubi.
Tubi
Yeah,
ecosystem. Yeah,
yeah,
but it's like that is kind of the agreed upon life cycle of indie movies now, as you have the most mystique and you're getting the most attention kind of paid to your work when you're in a
hmm,
festival, particularly an in-person festival. And then eventually, like, just when anyone can watch it at any time, it doesn't really have the same value.
yeah.
So it's kind of smart if this whiteface thing is orchestrated in a certain way.
Hey,
The fact that someone's out there wanting to take it off YouTube, and I'm just taking a shot at the dark, but it's a way to kind of hold on to that mystique forever because you're
yeah,
always this kind of unattainable
yeah.
object.
Well, with the exception of only a couple moments in Whiteface, I don't know why it was taken off YouTube. I thought maybe there was something with the longer cut that there was like it got flagged for nudity or but I mean there's a couple moments. Even like Russ, I swear there's a scene that was in the 2.5 hour version I saw it of that definitely stuck out. It was one of the gorier moments. Uh, Russ said like, no, that wasn't in the version. We kept it. Whoever sent that in the 90 minute one brought it back, kind of thing
It's
like that.
also it's
So
also fascinating because I kept waiting for it to turn into a slasher movie,
yeah.
and it doesn't exactly. It kind of upended my expectations in a way.
It's very Maniac.
Yeah.
It's very LA Maniac. I mean, I had an
But
idea
but
called
in
yeah.
Maniac he kills people. This is a little different than that.
He more he self harms. That's the
Yeah.
thing. He self harms. And he definitely stalks people. There's some
Yeah,
moments that
yeah,
are,
the
yeah,
stalking element is
yeah,
very effective. And you
yeah,
also wonder how many people are actually actors. It feels like quite a few of them are just people on the
yeah.
street, which may be the reason it can never get distribution, is because there's not image releases.
There's a whole thing at play that I'm not a part of that conversation, nor is I think most people. And it's just sort of, yeah, I talked with Only Found Footage fans who produced also Florida Man, and Rich is such a library of knowledge, and he was like, I was like, what are you doing with it? He was like, I don't, I'm not, not really a part of it, kind of,
Yeah.
he's seen he's seen the full version. Um, it's interesting. It's a good note to end on because it's ghost, it's whiteface lore, urban legends, myths that are created. I think by choice. I wanted to relate back to Murder Death Koreatown. I highly recommend if you ever get to see it. It's something that is very special to me.
It's
Um,
on my list. I've just never been able to find it.
uh, I'll talk. I'll see what's up because
You know a
so
guy.
well I know a guy who knows a guy, and maybe I can then get a version. But then also like the guy who made it just does not want to be associated with it, and he also submitted it. This guy, has their own story of what happened at the festival where he just showed up. Is the thing like it was all submitted like unknown, uncredited, unknown, and then like, but it was submitted to another hole in the head first, and George and I both were like, "Hey, this is great, but this is definitely an Uff movie. Like this is early Uff. I think Uff 3, weirdly enough, right before the pandemic, played it, and but it has a similar vibe to Whiteface. It's way more consumable. There's never like a long. There's little different versions that existed supposedly, but L.A. very L.A. Based off a murder that supposedly is real, things like that, shot on just someone's iPhone, um, having a nervous breakdown the whole time, um, kind of thing. So yeah, there's that legend, but also that Tubi thing you mentioned is like another hole in the head, really before like Uff really, and another hole. It's still George's, like he was one of the only people that ever showed Serbian film before it got pulled from the markets. Like that's how I found out about Another Hole in the Head. And before Tubi and all that, it was like, oh, places like this are the only time you're going to get to see something like this. Definitely Another Hole in the Head, and also in that era, like extreme gore and sex were a lot more attainable, or were like, oh yeah, we're gonna Human Centipede 2, kind of thing. Um, but now you have more of the urban legend film, which is very much like, yeah, it's the atmosphere that's built around it, not so much the content that's in there. And so, yeah, we'll see where that all goes. But it's its own ghost story, its own
Yeah,
legends, and it's all shown at the Balboa Theater. So,
yeah, and I
um,
hope that honestly,
yeah,
it's a mystery I hope is never solved. I see all these sleuths on Reddit. It's like,
yeah,
oh, I figured out who the actor is, and it's like, why would you do that? I
yeah.
don't want to know this.
Yeah,
You know?
well, people like, especially in this day and age of like, oh, I need to find the science behind it. And it's true. Like that's a big thing with ghosts is like, for me, it's like I want to see one. I think, apparitions do appear to people, whether they're psychosis or but then also, yeah, it's they want to know the story. Like, oh, there's a tragedy behind this, or there's really, oh, this sad story. Like Hotel Cecil, which is a big place in
Yeah.
LA that has so many stories like that. I think that's something that people want to attach themselves to, and now because of the internet, they can. Oh, I saw this here, but it is pretty funny. Like one of the first things you see in Whiteface is Minecraft, the movie.
Yeah.
You're like, well, clearly we
Yeah,
are
clearly
in
this was just shot.
2025,
Yeah.
yeah, and iPhones and what have you. I love that one guy who comes and is like, "Hey, is that a 357?" That dude who looks like David
Yeah.
Dawson to me. Um, um, I'm just like that. That moment is for me, but it's cool. Like this sort of like, oh, this guy. It's a reference to like that era, and I don't know. I love talking about it. Maybe because I have a podcast, they won't tell me more about it, kind of
Yeah.
thing in the ether. Because uh, you know. But Sean, great to have you on. Always a pleasure out here in this big, wide, warped world that we're all living in,
Hell
and
yeah.
that we get to talk. I definitely took over that because you asked me about whiteface. That's a
No,
whole
I
thing.
wanted to end on a white face corner
White,
there
but
because
that's actually,
that was an interest. Like I wasn't expecting to discover something like that at UF, and
yeah,
maybe that's just a good plug for UF. Is like
yeah.
come out and check out what's playing because I went in with I intentionally like didn't want to know anything about
Yeah,
what I was seeing. Even not even just the secret screening. I didn't want to know anything about
yeah,
Infirmary or Zebra Hooves, except that I knew who I was familiar with the other works
yeah.
of David.
Yeah, I think the people
Yeah,
that
so it was
also
a
put
fun
together the
time.
program do a great job of not. They'll even do the fun. There's a lot of redacted sometimes just to keep the
Yeah.
lore going. I mean, so much happens. I mean, you saw that program this
Yeah.
year. Like that thing is
So, so
wild.
yeah, that was quite a production, that program.
Um, yeah, and on that end, well, Sean, love to have you back. I'd love to get Chad. Love to get some people. Definitely as we're doing the Get Warped thing, but also Balboa Theater. It's 100 years. Filmmakers like yourself finding a home, showing world premieres of your movies. On that end, I mean, like, hopefully, another 100 years will go.
Yeah, man. Love the
On that
Balboa.
on that end. So, but yeah, stay warped out there, Sean. I'll see ya.
See ya.